it'll open up a window
Right here.
and it's trying to start the streaming. That's going to start playing the meeting that creates feedback. So once this opens and starts like that, go ahead and just close that. It'll open up a window.
Close it.
Close that one. And it'll that's what it was. It was playing this behind.
Okay.
And you are good to start.
We're good to go. Okay.
Yeah. So we get the minute all and everybody in.
And it is 5:01, so we are kind of late.
How's everyone doing?
Just
We
fine.
have
How's it going?
a quorum. I don't see Miss Farron yet.
I'm here.
Trying to keep up with the rest of y'all.
Great. All right, I will go ahead and call this meeting of the Development and Services Committee to order. Will the clerk call the roll?
Certainly. Pugh,
Here.
Horacio,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
English,
Present.
Newton, Ms. Shakis, I see you, so I'm going to count you present, but we cannot hear you.
Yes.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We have quorum.
Right. Second item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes. The regular session on March 23rd, 2021. For pages 7 through 10 of our agenda packet. Is there a motion in regards to the minutes?
No.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any additions, deletions, or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Pugh,
Yes.
Horacio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Did I vote on the minutes?
Yes,
I
you
vote
did.
yes. Okay, great. Sorry. All right, so number 3 is adoption of the agenda. Is there, our staff, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Chair, no request to change.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve or to adopt the agenda today?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Mathis, will you call the roll?
Sure. Pugh,
Yes.
Horacio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Our items for number 4, we have items pending analysis, no action required today. So we have a fairly short agenda. For item 4A, I move to evaluate affordable housing options to include the option of establishing an affordable housing trust fund for Richland County as a benefit to the public. I do have just an update from my work with the Columbia Affordable Housing Task Force. They have asked to present to County Council. So we have a written Affordable Housing Task Force report, which I've circulated to the clerk's office and asked them to share it with council members, but also would like Mr. Brian Grady from South Carolina State Housing to come and speak to us as part of the Development and Services report out on our next regularly scheduled meeting. So that is the update that I have for this committee in regards to affordable housing.
Rachel,
Yes, Mr. Livingston.
I'll also share with staff the documents that I received from More Just regarding affordable housing as it relates to the fund that they asked us to consider. So I'll submit that to council too, since that's related to affordable housing.
Thank you. And can those items be included with our next agenda packet? That question's to the
I'll
clerk
get that to
too.
administration, do that, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so item 4B, I move to direct the county attorney to work with the county administrator to research and draft an absentee landlord ordinance. From my last conversation with the administrator, I believe there was supposed to be maybe a conversation with our acting county attorney. Is that correct?
If you're, may I be, or Mr. Brown, which one of
Yes.
us you want to talk to?
Yes, please. Well, whoever wants to speak, if you do have an update, and if there is no update, that's also okay. I just wanted to check in with you.
I don't have an update. I think that there was Mike Z from planning put together a small update for you, and if it's not in the packet, I'm not really sure what happened, but essentially what we had done up to this point was I think at some point in time we pulled back on this ordinance and tried to pare it down per what we thought Ms. Newton's wishes were, to make this more about your typical nuisance type issues at rental properties, which means that we took out the portions related to the building codes violations. Not that we could address those in another ordinance, but this ordinance wouldn't deal with building codes. So we took that backwards, and we needed to know from council if that's really the direction you want to go, and if that's if we were correct about what Ms. Newton wanted to do. We think that this ordinance deals with things like weeds and rank vegetation, sheriff coming out to the property lot, noise violations, such nuisance type violations. It adds them up for a point system, which is based on what the city did. All those are a little different. If this is the way you want to go, then staff is going to get together again and try to put together some sort of cost analysis on what it would take from departmental levels, who would have to get involved, how much staff we need. Sheriff's Department, I'm sure, is going to want to chime in. They had some issues with staffing, I believe, plus whether they thought that the counting system would work, because people don't actually go to court very quickly. So it could take over a year for somebody to actually be found guilty of one of these violations. So and if we're doing this on a yearly basis, we might need to deal with that kind of thing. So we actually were just looking for guidance from you guys as to where to go from here, I believe.
If I can speak up here, I know that my constituents, or the constituents in District 5, are concerned about being able to, I think, have something that where there would be a consequence that would be felt swiftly enough that action, that it would incentivize the either the property owner or the renter to change their behaviors or change some of their actions. I know that's at least some of where I'm coming from in terms of this ordinance. So, if it's like there are, in my case, university students who are renting properties, let's say in Rosewood or Olympia, they are, having parties that are a nuisance to the community. by the time any consequences would be felt, they would already be into the next school year, out of school, or whatever. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of this ordinance. I don't know. I'd love to hear from my colleagues in terms of what they're thinking about as well. And I'm on my phone, so I'm looking for hands. Yes, go ahead. Miss Newton has her hand up, but Miss English, go ahead.
Yeah, I just couldn't reach it fast enough. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's been my question the entire time.
Can you hear me? Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
No, that's just been my question the entire time.
Sorry, you guys were cutting.
The enforceability, and it's kind of like what you said. If I give you a citation or something, and by the end of next year, you're in another state, how effective is this? Is it presented to the student, or is it presented to the actual homeowner, the person the landlord? And so those are questions that I just have, and the enforceability of it. But yes, I get it. I definitely get it. Thank you.
Yeah, Miss Newton.
Well, I don't know if someone wants to address Ms. English's concern before I ask my question, because mine is slightly
Go ahead,
different.
sweetheart.
Oh.
I mean, I'm just kind of talking, so it may be answered in the interim. So.
Okay. Well, let me just say, I would also like to hear thoughts on Ms. English's question. And sorry, I paused my video because my internet's a bit unstable here. But first, let me just say thanks to the staff and to the work group for coming together to work on this. And from my perspective as the maker of the motion, I appreciate that you trimmed it down, because similar to the points that Ms. Terratio is making, my intention behind this motion is there are a lot of properties where there are renters who are violating county ordinances on a regular basis, but don't feel incentivized to correct those problems because they don't live there. And so the idea is, how can we make sure that property owners have skin in the game so that they can, if we can't have their tenants do better, that perhaps the landlord would be motivated to do so. So in that sense, it does align. And I would appreciate the work group coming back together. You've identified a lot of challenges with this ordinance as written that I am open to how we fix it. My objective is just the objective that I've stated. But one of the questions that I have is, if you look on page 15 of our packet, it's the top item, section 1672, item B. It says that before the permit can be granted, you're certifying that the property complies with the International Property Maintenance Code for minimum building code standards. And so my question is, was this item left in by mistake, or was it left in on purpose? And then depending on the answer to that question, I have a follow-up question.
Yes, ma'am. It actually, I left it in on purpose, and I'll tell you why. It was mainly for another way to cite the landowner. So let's say that all they have to do is personally certify. We didn't say they had to turn any documentation and do anything, but if we say that you lied on your application, those would be points against you already, and it might be a quicker way to get to a landowner if we needed to. But it can easily be taken out. It's neither here nor there with me. It was really just a last minute thing I thought of. So.
Got it. Well, that's different, because I wanted to be clear, because at one point in the original draft, it was very heavy towards inspection. And so from your perspective, does item 1672B, since it's just a self-certification, does that item increase the cost of implementation of this program, because cost was one of the concerns, or not really?
I don't think it would increase the cost. So they'll self-certify. Now, if somebody came back to us, a renter came back and complained about their landlord, they weren't fixing the property, they weren't something, and we had to go out, that would just give us another way to cite them. But I don't think that that's something we would, it's not the intention anyway, that we would go out and look at the property and make sure that it complied. It's just a self-certification merely. That's it.
Got it. And so then as this ordinance is written, again, I was envisioning this as a tool that the county could use, but then do you also envision that a tenant might report the landlord themselves for violations of, I don't know, of code?
It
Because
could.
if so, that does add a cost. That does add a cost component that's slightly different. And so I just want to be clear on the scope of this.
I hadn't thought about it in that way, but I don't see a reason why a tenant couldn't call your attention to, say, weeds and rank vegetation. Perhaps as a part of their lease agreement, they're not required to cut the grass. The rental company has somebody that comes out and does it, but they never actually do it. I suppose that they, could then file a complaint, but that's not really what I was thinking of, and I don't know how often that would happen. I mean, usually the tenant's going to be the one being the problem, but I suppose it could actually happen.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my questions. And so then, just as been pointed out above, when the work group comes back together, I would love for us to look at the time frame in terms of how we're doing this, because depending on the terms of leases, you could have a situation where you have a landlord who repeatedly has tenants who violate our ordinances, but just due to when leases expire, they actually never have any consequences or motivation to do better. So with that, thank you, Ms. McLean, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. Did I see that Ms. Barron, did you have your hand up?
I did, but my
Or
question
was I
answered.
imagining that?
No. It was up, but
Okay.
my questions
Okay,
were
great.
answered.
Okay, great. Yes, and I'll just recognize myself and just say that I do like also, while I think the spirit of this, or the reason that this ordinance or this motion came to be was, because behaviors on the part of the renter, I also think that anything that we can do to protect the rights of renters to have decent places to live and hold landlords accountable would also be beneficial to the citizens of Richland County. So that's just my 2 cents for that. Okay, let me look and see if there's anybody else. Ms. Newton,
Ms.
is that
Horatio.
your hand again, or is that?
No, I raised it again really quickly.
Yes.
Just to say to the staff when they're evaluating this, as we're dealing with issues about property and property management, I think that there are a lot of complexities in that. And so I certainly want to make sure that renters' rights are also protected. That's not really the intent of this motion. And I guess I want to be careful that if the mechanisms of enforcement are different, that staff feel like they have the latitude to recommend, hey, this ordinance goes this way, but if you want to address this, then you might want to have a separate ordinance. I'm not saying that that's necessary per se, but I know that how this got bogged down before was that it veered into a wholly different category. And if we're going to start talking about mechanisms that are going to make landlords fix things for tenants, that is a whole big kettle of fish that is different, that I think might need to be addressed separately. So I just don't want staff to feel like they have to necessarily put everything together, because that wasn't the intent of this motion. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else for the good of the committee? All right, seeing none and hearing none, the next item, I believe, is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
And am I right that it's adjournment? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Ms. Mathis, will you take the roll to adjourn?
Sure. Pugh,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see some of y'all at 6. Have a good rest of your hour.
Thank you. You have a good evening.